Happy Saturday, all. Hope everyone's enjoying their weekend. Welcome to the Left Fresh Podcast. Thank you all for jumping on with me. Um, if you haven't already, please subscribe, like, comment. Like I said, thank you all for jumping on this Saturday evening, this 10 o'clock special, Saturday Night Live hip hop talk. Um, got a good little show lined up for us all, man. Not too much action jumping off this weekend as far as any new releases or anything of that nature. But overall perspective, though, this is probably a good time to just go back and revisit a lot of music that came in a big wave, and big quantity of it. So, I like this time where I can kind of just, a lot of times so much music comes out at once from so many different artists all over the place in this day and age is that it's kind of hard to get all this music at once. So you kind of take the new music and the next album comes out next week again, and it just kind of just goes into the back of your mind, and album that 2, 3 albums later is like, oh man, I forgot about this album right here. Like, it was good when it came out, and you still didn't even get a chance to fully consume and digest it. You know what I mean? So, I like these dry periods in hip hop where it's kind of like, there's a lot of music coming out, especially over the past half a decade. Um, so much music has come out in such a large quantity that it was kind of hard to get into so many albums and really consume it as well without another album coming out to go listen to. So in this day and age, in the streaming era and everything like that, there's so much music to consume. I know a lot of people have the perception that there isn't that much music out here, but it really is a lot of music to listen to. So, like, I like these times. I like this platform where I can just get out here and discuss this type of music and get everybody engaged and put people on to new things and new music and everything like that. Me myself being a hip hop head, I like these. It's kind of like my safe space where I can get out here and just kind of talk to everybody and get everybody tapped in with new music and everything like that, or just get them tapped in with music that they may have missed in a big wave of music that came out over the past 6 or 7 years, even. You know what I mean? So, a lot of people was like, I forgot about the 2010s a little bit. Like, looking back at the 2010s is like seeing albums is like 10 years old and came out like 2016. It's like, man, what a time went. You know what I mean? And it's like, especially me as an old head, I'm 40 now. I'm about to be 41. A lot of us, it's kind of hard to keep up with new hip hop as we get older. Some of us like the same music from 20, 30 years ago too. So I mean, there's nothing wrong with that too. I have a lot of that discussion on this panel as well, on this platform as well too. So tune in, stay engaged with that. Like I said, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. You get the notifications when I'm about to go on. I try to do 9 o'clock. March Madness is on and everything like that, and a lot of festivities. So I kind of just felt it was manageable for everybody to get on at 10 p.m. and we can discuss it and everything like that. Probably try to keep it on at the 10 o'clock slot throughout the March Madness, and while everything's going on late at night, so I kind of come on a little later so we can discuss a little hip hop. Put you on to different things that you probably haven't heard, or you can just chime in with stuff that you heard, possibly put me on to something that I haven't gotten into, or probably missed the mine. You know what I'm saying? I'm not above missing this big wave. I don't think anybody can catch everything that's been out here. There's so many different artists. Like I said, the streaming era got so many different artists. They drop so frequently. Um, some artists you look for is like, oh man, what happened to him? And, it all happens, but that's the taste of an artist. But like I said, thank you all for jumping on, and I'm not going to delay you any longer. Let me get right into it. This is the best albums that I've come across in the past. Now we're in 2026, best 6 years. 2020 was a kind of a wild time. Of course, we was all through the pandemic and everything. Everybody was kind of locked in. It was kind of a rough year to put out new music, but yet nevertheless, we had artists that did, and they put out great music. Starting out even during the pandemic, starting out a brand new decade, and as it went forward, we started seeing a lot more. Um, it wasn't too much on the mainstream artist side of things. I felt it was kind of slow on that part, but I felt like there was also like an underground renaissance where a lot of artists were just getting active, independently, not really getting much major push or anything of that nature. Um, Artists that we expect to hear a lot of music from, especially from the 2010s. I'm gonna just go ahead and say the big three: Kendrick, Drake, J. Cole. A lot of their great music that came out in the 2010s that they put out. They kept it going in the 2020s. kind of hard to hold them to the same standard of the music they were putting out back in the 2010s. So I mean, I kind of felt like they're kind of like veterans at this point. They're just still putting out good music, but it's kind of like asking Nas to recreate Illmatic over and over again is something that, you just gotta grow and evolve from, and they've kind of shown that. Um, but like I said, we also seen a couple other artists break through. Um, if you go into the other lane, you think about the turn up trap lane, music, Future. He put out a big wave of music throughout the 2010s, and he continued in the 2020s. But then you also, kind of start pacing himself a little bit more. You start seeing you didn't see the wave as frequently, but he continued to keep dropping new music. But you also had like Lil Baby and Gunna, Young Thugger was kind of trying to push new music while he had his issues. But you see, like I said, started seeing a little changeover, a little transition. I started seeing artists like Moneybagg Yo come out, Big X the Plug now in recent years. Um, Different new generation of artists, along with even the veteran artists. I mean, legendary artists. Nas with Mass Appeal, he put out a lot of great legendary artists from Raekwon to De La Soul to Slick Rick. I mean, like the veterans came out active this decade. Nas himself put out a big 6 album run along with Killer Mike putting out a great album as well that won a Grammy. You know what I mean? And it's like, there's no age limit at this point. Hip hop is over 50 years old. So at this point, you're starting to see hip hop in different type of styles, different type of lanes, um, different generational brackets. I think the typical demographic that stops up to 35 is kind of expanded at this point. You got hip hop heads like myself in the 40s, you know, listening to what we grew up on. And even as of middle age points in our lives, we still, still consume hip hop. So um, at this point, I looked up a particular article that, I was reading around, looking at different articles that pointed out some of the best hip hop albums that came out in the 2020s. At this point, we're in 2026. We officially passed the halfway mark of, the decade. And kind of looking back, I wanted to see what was some of the best music that's come out so far in the 2020s. Music that we're going to look back on, possibly, 10, 15, 20 years from now. The same way we love music from the 90s 30 years ago, the music from the 2000s 20 years ago. You know, how we going to look back on the 2010s, how we going to look back on the 2020s. And I'm gonna probably jump in and come back on another episode going back into the 2010s as well. Because like I said, we're over a decade past that. And it's like, like I said, how we gonna look at, you know, hip hop in regards to, how our older heads look at the 90s or the 2000s. Me myself, grew up in those eras, so it's like, of course I love those days, but looking back at the most recent decade, which is this one, it's a lot of good music that came out during this time. You know what I mean? I'm reading different articles and a couple of articles. I'm going through a couple of articles. Never just relying on just one. I always look at different sources to find like a agreed upon album that universally revered. A universal artist that's put out work that's universally revered as well. And I'm gonna go ahead and let's get the names out the way that everybody already kind of knows. So, who was in the 2010s that kind of had everything, as far as mainstream hip hop and everybody looked at. Well, let's see what Drake did. And I'm gonna keep it straight up. I'm gonna show my Apple Music. And I'm gonna operate off the search bar for this episode. So pull up Drake. Okay, we'll start. Of course, we all know Drake from the albums in the 2010s. Reading This Is Too Late, Take Care. Many revere Take Care as a classic. Going to the albums he released in the 2020s. See the Dark Lane demos, not necessarily actual release, but just different things. Well, Dark Lane demos definitely were released. Yeah, Exclusive Side, Not to You, Chris Brown, well, Drake, you know, jumped in the 2020s, kind of the way he left off in the end of the 2010s, and with a Certified Lover Boy. Jay-Z did a great verse on Love All. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie on that one. Yeah, he did his thing on that one. And I think everybody remembers. Everybody should know Knife Talk. 21 Savage and Project Pat. Project Pat made a great appearance on that one as well. Way Too Sexy. That was a club banger. Future and Thugger. Certified Lover Boy. That came out in 2021. So yeah, Drake is going back to back. And then back again. Honestly, never mind. Of course, everybody knows that Player Fly sample on Jimmy Cook's 21 Savage. Yeah, I mean, Drake still dropped, sprinkled a few hits in the 2020s. Spin About You, 21 Savage, the her Lost album, Rich Flex. I mean, yeah, Drake. Yeah, one thing about Drake, he always had a consistent club banger. First person shooter with J. Cole on the scary on the For All the Dogs. That that kind of what made that got everything popping with the whole Drake and Kendrick thing. And then J. Cole kind of thought it was gonna be like a triangle match, a triple threat match. But yeah, Drake had a double disc album on this one. Now I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm not like the biggest Drake fan at all, but I'm objective when it comes to like you can't find you can't be honest if I like a Drake song that wasn't a hit or songs that everybody played or it was revered. So I just got to keep it a buck. Last album was in 2025. Sexy songs for you. Made a couple. Yeah, he does a lot of work with Party Next Door. Yeah, usually like I said, he usually goes for the club banger or the song for the ladies. Drake, 2020's, he was pretty consistent. I mean, I wouldn't say anything like the 2010s for Drake, but you know, staying on the charts, it's kind of the goal for him. Making the hits, making the bangers, song for the ladies. The quick, easy hits that he can do. It's like layups for Drake. You know what I mean? So, one thing he can do, the melodic rap. You know, try to do the versatility, show the versatility. So I can't hate on it so much. I mean, like I said, I mean, I'm not the biggest Drake fan, but in reality, like you got to be objective. Be like, hey, this one right here is slap. This song right here work. All right, this one's a hit. So that's just keeping it real. But yeah, I'm gonna go to the other member of the big three. Got it. Kind of had an epic, kind of the beef of our era of the 2020s. Kendrick and Drake. Um, yeah, Kendrick, in the 2020s had two albums. Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers was like I said, Kendrick is probably known for his big three albums. Probably known for Good Kid, Mad City, Pimp a Butterfly, Damn. But then you have these two albums in the 2020s, who I wouldn't necessarily put on the same wouldn't put as before those three, but it was still solid albums. I mean, put a good quantity of music on there. This one right here is underrated as far as how well it flowed. Like Kendrick albums already have a great cohesion to it, but this one right here actually had just as much cohesion, if not more, than some of the other three albums the best three albums that he put out. This one just really had the storyline, everything they put to it. Um, Super creative as always. Yeah, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers was still a great Kendrick album. It just held to a high standard, like most classic albums, like most artists that have classic albums. GNX, a lot of question, about whether it should have got a Grammy, but it was well earned nevertheless to me. It's still a good album. Like I said, very consistent. Kendrick still staying on course in the 2020s. Just two albums, but they both hit, especially GNX, Grammy winning. Um, like I said, it wasn't the best out of the three Kendrick albums that I listened to, but I mean, it's definitely still two albums that you can go through his discography. Be like, yeah, this is definitely got some hits on there. Definitely songs I can go back to and revisit. So yeah, big shout out to Kendrick on that one. Um, that leaves, let me go ahead and go to J. Cole. Cole, another one. Like I said, the big three kind of really made their stamp in the 2020s. I mean, the 2010s. So going into the 2020s, kind of like a high standard set for them. Um, although they did quality work in it during that time as well. Look at Cole from the off season, 95 South, still hits hard. 100 mils still hits hard. Number 7 with Little Baby. Little Baby had a great verse on there. Um, yeah, it was a pretty good album though. I liked it. It wasn't like I said. I wouldn't put it in the same category as Forest Hills Drive. I wouldn't put it in the same category as Born Sinner, but it was still a quality album. Might delete later. Um, yeah, this is kind of the time where with Cole backing out of the beef with Kendrick and subsequently probably Drake kind of took the luster out of this album. It was actually pretty good, but like I said, the whole headline of him backing out of the beef kind of took the luster out of it. Um, 12 the 12 tracks, the 7 minute drill was pretty good, but like I said, pretty much everything kind of 2001. I like that album too. I like that. I mean that song Fever was pretty good, but yeah, Cole kept it going, and then this one that recently came out, The Fall Off. This one was a pretty good album. Like I said, it wasn't the highest of J. Cole standards, but it was definitely a pretty solid album, especially an album that I was like 2 years removed from. Might delete later, but yeah, like I said, the big three kind of made their mark in the 2010s, and they kind of kept it going in the 2020s. I'm not saying they completely fell off, but I'm just I don't think I think they've shown their peak years in the 2010s, and the albums they released was still pretty good. I mean, like I said, the Fall Off showed growth as well, but they definitely had some good stuff though in between. I don't think you listen to Cole. I don't think I've listened to Cole after the first 2 albums. Are they straight 2 albums or skip albums? Yeah, the thing is like with Cole is that, like I said, those albums, it's a high standard compared to the albums that he's made before. Like he's made albums before that was pretty good, but I mean that was great. I mean, and some debate them as classics, but I don't think the most recent ones that he's released are on the same level as you know, like I said, Born Center or Forest Hills Drive. So, but I mean, like I said, if you go through an album, there's at least 4, 5, 6 songs that you can listen to and re-listen to again. You can revisit again. So I mean, yeah, there's definitely albums that I probably wouldn't revisit. Um, but there's definitely songs that I would throw on a playlist and definitely keep keep going. You know what I mean? And just and roll with those couple singles. Yeah. I like the big three. They earned their reputation as far as they earned their reputation throughout the 2010s. Like I said, they kept it going. I mean, for the most part, I can always say they're consistent. They are who they are. Um, I think Kendrick is very creative with his lyricism. I think Drake is very. I think Drake's going to give you he's going to give you a club banger. I always think that J Cole's going to give you lyricism, going to give you storytelling. J Cole's like an MC's MC. Like I said, Kendrick is he's real good at switching flows and his versatility. I respect a lot with the big three that brought the hip hop consistently. But one of the things that I also like to point out is like I always feel like there's more to just a genre than just three artists. Like I feel like artists have their some artists are more popular than others, but at the same time, I've also think that I'm of the logic that there's catalog out here that's just as good as anybody else's. That's just maybe not as popular or just doing it independently, not getting the same promotion, not getting the same cosigns. But there's plenty of artists out here, especially in the streaming era, that's definitely doing their thing. Like I said, outside of the big three, there's plenty of other good music out here. And I think that's kind of got lost in a lot of hip hop discussions, like a lot of fandom out here, and where you know fans want to discuss artists as personally invested as opposed to just being objective and sticking to, hey, this person is making good music. And like I said, I'm not the biggest Drake fan by all measures, but I at the same time I know, what he does good, and making hits and bangers is what he does, and he does, he even he even showed lyricism and stuff like that. He even showed lyricism as well, what I'm saying, in recent years and everything like that too. But one of the things he's done, despite the whole outlook of the whole battle with him and Kendrick and everything of that nature, he's still coming out making hits and getting the streams and everything like that. So that's kind of the thing you gotta just be objective about. And like, Cole, for not engaging in the beef, he took a lot of flack for it, but at the same time it's like, he's still making music and displaying lyricism and make you think like, hey, if we got in the ring and actually battle, we probably could have a good chance of anybody actually winning. So that's kind of the inside. And then as far as Kendrick go, he continues to just keep winning, keep making hits, keep making great albums. You know, just elevating and everything, taking advantage of the time he's in, and that's the big three. But like I said, moving on to the other names that I can also listen to myself. Um, but like I said, I'm looking around, just making sure that a lot of my opinions are shared as well, and it is. Um, Also, my opinion is also, I think, a pretty good one. So, I mean, these are my selective artists that I listen to as well, and who also been making great music in the past 2010. One of which is Freddie Gibbs. I think that Freddie Gibbs was an artist that was kind of debuted in the 2010s as well. Kind of just flies under the radar a little bit more than Kendrick and J. Cole and you know Drake and everything, but display lyricism on a high level. Great beat selection. Um, Solid artists, solid compilations, solid work. Um, since the Like I said, if you go back to his further work, you got Pinata, you got Fetty, you got Bandana. But in 2020's, Alfredo was another great album that he made with the Alchemist, and almost won a Grammy. It was a 10 song album that was perfect beat, perfect flow. I'm not perfect, but you know what I mean? It's like just great, like a great combination of the two. Like Freddie Gibbs is a great artist that works with a lot of great producers. Madlib was one of his producers on his earlier projects, and in the 2020s he started working with Alchemist. And I mean, he did some couple appearances on tracks that was produced by Alchemist, but this was an actual project that he did with Alchemist. And Alchemist, one of the greatest producers ever. Um, Underground, mainstream. You think about it, Alchemist has done beats from Jadakiss's "We Gonna Make It" to a lot of beats from Mobb Deep. Product. I mean, Alchemist has been around for 20, 30 years, 30 years, and working with Freddie Gibbs, a talented artist who can do multiple flows, can do lyricism. Freddie Gibbs from the Midwest, in Gary, Indiana. This was a great project. Starting from the first track, 1985. Got the guitars playing and everything like that. And Freddie just going fast flow on it. It's crazy. God is perfect. Scotty Beam with Rick Ross on that one. Rick Ross made a great appearance. Um, Sad watching this, looking at this song right here, Frank Lucas with Benny the Butcher, knowing that him and Benny aren't on good terms anymore, and haven't made any great music anymore. This is kind of like one of those beefs that destroy good music. I'm gonna revisit this one as well. Yeah, Tyler the Creator on number 6, something to rap about. Conway the Machine, also from Griselda, on track 8. Yeah, this was a great project right here. I love this project. I revisit this one all the time. He also came back with Soul Separately. And this was another one that had Rick Ross on track 6, Lobster Omelet. And track number 5 had Moneybag Yo on it, Too Much. Yeah, Offset on track 3, Pain and Strife, Pusha T. He had a couple good appearances on here. DJ Paul, Raekwon, Anderson Paak, Music Soul Child. Yeah. Scarface. Yeah, this one right here, Freddie Gibbs don't get a lot of credit for this album right here. This one had a lot of appearances on here, a lot of good appearances. Um, you Only Die Once definitely gets highly revered. I was reading in an article that this is one of the best albums that came out in the 2020s. Um, I always like on track number 1, Status, Cosmo Freestyle, Wolverine. Yeah, I mean, I think the first, I mean, you can pretty much play this one through. I'm not gonna lie. I would suggest this. If you don't know anything about Freddie Gibbs, and you're not up on any of his work, or you just haven't heard this one right here, you probably need to go ahead and revisit this one. I'm probably gonna revisit this one after I get off live. But yeah, I would definitely suggest Freddie Gibbs. You only live once. You only die once. This was another great album that came out in 2020. And then of course last year, part two, the Alfredo with the Alchemist. This one right here was a great album. Came out, I think, in July, in the middle of the summertime. This one was a great album as well. I think this one's going to age well as well. I have a tough one to debate between this one and Alfredo One. I mean, honestly, I think still would probably go with Alfredo One, but Freddie definitely did his thing on this album right here. Like I said, he got appearances again. Larry June, Anderson .Paak, JID on Gold Feet. This one, Gold Feet right here, you got to listen to this single as well. Feeling with Larry June was great. Yeah. Ensalada, definitely. Number 4 with Anderson .Paak. 1995 was great. Yeah. This one was a solid project too. Those are the highs on that one. I like these ones. Yeah. So Freddie kind of went on a 4-album run. And if you look back, like I said, if you don't know anything about Freddie Gibbs, you guys got to get tapped in. You got to get caught up. Yeah, because he's been going hard for a while. Pinata, all the way up. You only live twice. Yeah. Freddie Gibbs. I don't know how many people we add into the big threes. We added big fours, anything like that. But objectively, Freddie Gibbs got underrated discography. Super underrated. Like, I'm gonna check out another big crit who was also big in the 2010s. Um, Kind of fell back a little bit compared to what he was dropping in the 2020s. I mean 2010s. But in the 2020s, he was still, they had re-releases of his older stuff. But he had Digital Roses Don't Die in 2022. Yeah, these were some cool cuts right here. What It Matters, So Cool, Just For You. Yeah, I'm a big Crit fan, like him as well. Full Court Press with Smoke Dizzy and Wiz Khalifa. This was another smooth joint that came out in the 2022 release. And he just dropped one as well, dedicated to Catalina Byritz. Yeah, this just came out in December of last year. I-20 was hard. Yeah, I like that one. High Def. Yeah, you guys got to check out Big Crit. Even in the 2020s, I mean, like I said, we all know the work he did in the 2010s, but in the 2020s, he did a lot of great stuff. I mean, honestly, like when it comes to that lane, I would say like, this big three with Kendrick, Drake, Cole, but Freddie Gibbs and Big Crit, those guys were right there along with him. As far as like releasing catalog, just kind of just flying under the radar a little bit more. Um, Another 2010 artist that kind of seen where they picked up at in the 2020s. I look at Future. Look at Future. All the extensive work he did in the 2010s. 2020s, he still kept going. He got High Off Life. He worked with Travis Scott, Young Thug, Uzi Vert. Had Life Is Good with Drake. Last name was Lil Durk. High Off Life was another joint project with Lil Uzi Vert. High volume of tracks too, 24 tracks. I remember that one. Drinking and Smoking. Had dope beat selection on that one. And then I Never Liked You. This one right here had a bunch of appearances on this one too. Kodak Black, Like Me, 42 Doug and Lil Baby. Definitely gets played in the system. Wait For You with Drake and Thames for the ladies. Yeah, Future came with it, man, in the 2020s. Wasn't really much of a drop off. Future with Metro Boomin, We Don't Trust You. Yeah, type shit with him and Metro, Travis, and Playboy Cardi. Yeah, Future kept going for a while, man. Yeah, Everyday Hustle with Metro Boomin and Rick Ross. He kept coming with the bangers as well. One thing Future and Drake kept doing. Still don't trust you in 2024. Yeah, Future kept coming with it. Yeah, I like Crit too. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, Crit, big time. You know what I mean? Consistent too. Yeah, this one right here, Future, yeah, double disc, the mixtape Pluto. But yeah, that was the last. We still don't trust you. It came out in 2024. That was pretty much the last Future album. You know, naturally, I guess anybody could take a break as Future, but that's the last one in 2024. Um, Artists that kind of emerged. I mean, putting in work before that, right? Lil Baby was putting in work in the 2020, in the 2010s, around 2018, 2019. But I think in 2020 is when he really, turned the corner and became like known to everybody. You know what I mean? And it was like I said, you look at his work in the 2010s, like 2017, 2018. He got to the 2020s, and this is when My Turn came out. And this is when Lil Baby was everywhere. He was like a features everywhere, kind of kind of getting crowned a little bit as the Lil Wayne of his era. And I mean, as far as the younger dudes, man, yeah, he had a crazy run though. Something to prove. This album right here was actually really good. Yeah, I got to give the Lil Baby on this one. This was actually a great album. My Turn is definitely aged well. Um, kind of wait for more. I mean, he dropped new releases last year, Wham and the Leak. Not on the same level. I mean, not so much of a drop off, but it's definitely My Turn is when it hit the streets. It was definitely a big time. It was a big time hit. You know what I mean? It was a big time wave when My Turn during the pandemic, and a little bit after that as well. It was a little bit of anticipation. I think around It's Only Me. Um, he was still kind of making the same music consistently, but I don't know. It just didn't seem like they had the same effect. And it was like I said, the wave he hit in 2020, it kind of didn't hit. It kind of doesn't hit the same kind of hard sound that it once did. You know what I mean? Like 2025, 2026. You still kind of check for Lil Baby's music, but that 2020 wave was like, oh man, he was feeling like, oh, he the next Lil Wayne. You know what I mean? Like that was kind of the run that the younger generation was really hyping up. And while we on the pack, while we talking about the younger generation, and then we got to talk about artists that you know came out alongside him and is still making good music right now. We got to talk about Gunna. I know Gunna, through the whole period of time with him and Lil Baby and Young Thugger and everybody came out. Gunna was kind of like the last come out. He's been keeping it going since then. I mean, Drip Season Forever, Gift and a Curse, One of One, Last One. Gunna's been dropping album after album. Each year for the in the 2020s. I mean, in the Islam language, of course, too. He's another one that came out in the late 2010s. Came out basically with Lil Baby, right behind Young Thugger. Thugger kind of put them all on, and he kind of just took the baton and went on his own from there. I mean, Gunna just took off in a lane of his own at this point. I like, the production and picks and everything like that. You can't deny some of the hits. I mean, he puts out a big wave of songs put a big wave of albums with a lot of songs on them. So it's like man, he's like, can't deny the volume of it. And it's like you're gonna get plays. It's gonna be on social. A lot of his songs on social media. A lot of his songs on TikTok. A lot of his songs is everywhere. So you know, Gunna, Lil Baby. It kind of came like one wave after the other. I mean, Gunna's still going at this point. I mean, he just finished dropping music last year. Um, that he also in his name, another Atlanta artist, Money Man. You think about the 2010s. I mean, another artist kind of started going in the 2010s, but picked it up definitely in the 2020s. You look at the work he's done from this one release I caught on to him really around 2019 with Paranoia, but started doing work with PB Longway, and then from like the 2020s on down, I mean, you can see the type of project he's been dropping nonstop project after nonstop project. Croptober, I remember that one. I would point that out for anybody that wants to get put on the Money Man. 30 Days just came out last year. He did 3 different projects last year. So Money Man was definitely busy. Oh yeah, Gunna's production. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like beat selection is a big part of it. Definitely gotta have a great beat selection. I would say the same thing about Gunna as well. He got a lot of work with, Zaytoven, and you all know Zaytoven for working with Future and Gucci Mane. He did a lot of good. They got a good chemistry with each other. Zaytoven and Money Man, definitely. Money Man always felt like it was kind of been underrated, you know, especially in the past couple of years. You look back at his catalog, and just the 2020s alone, yeah, Money Man as far as that lane go, you know, yeah, people got to check him out too. And I mean, like I said, Atlanta, and that's I just went in Atlanta right there. I mean, Atlanta keeping it going, still a strong city as far as a strong hip hop city. But Memphis as well. I gotta give it up to Memphis. You know, one of the main artists from Memphis that's been going hard right now too. Moneybagg Yo. Especially in his 2020s as well. I mean, his start to the 2020s was crazy as well. I wouldn't say necessarily a drop off, but I mean the way he came out around time served. At the end of the 2020s, you know, the end of the 2010s. Sorry. Um, yeah, he dropped a whole volume of music, and then he started, into the 2020s, still making music, still dropping music and everything, but still at the same time, he's, not so much of a drop off, but you got to. There's eventually an understandable slowdown at some point. You know what I mean? So yeah, Moneybagg, strong flow, still consistent, still making good music out here, still doing good features. Like his work. Um, Also got to look at, you know, I think a lot of people get caught up in his, seeing him on the internet wilding out, but that's 2 times. You got to actually listen. Like Finesse can actually rap. Finesse can actually rap. I know some people might see him wilding out on social media a lot, but if you listen to his music, he could actually rap. He came out pretty strong in the 2020s as well. Art of War was pretty tough. 90 Days was pretty tough as well. Yeah, I like Finesse, man. Finesse makes some good music, solid Memphis style rap. Definitely keeping the Memphis style of rap going. So I definitely like his work. Um, Another artist that kind of emerged in the 2020s, and we got the plug. I'm out of Texas because one of the things I think Texas is kind of like I can't take it serious. I'm gonna have to try them out. Hey, it's cool when they do it, and I do it. It's a problem. Hey, listen, that song right there, they just that. He got a couple other songs too. Yeah, Finesse is hilarious, man. But yeah, I think he actually, he can actually rap though. I mean, I actually like Finesse, man. Yeah, Finesse is funny, man. But his music is actually pretty good. Um, Big X the Plug, he kind of emerged on the scene around, in the 2020s as well. I think Take Care is really aged well. Yeah, I think Take Care has really aged well. Came out, let's say 2024, 2025. Yeah, in January of 2025. Law and Order was good. Change Me was great. Lost the Love, Take Care. Yeah. Finesse, Big X the Plug came out kind of like feeling like rookie of the year. He was on a double XL cover. Yeah. And then you also see his album just came out Friday, 6WA album. Definitely was liking that one. Got his boys on there. Texas going real hard on that one. He had an appearance with Snoop Dogg. Got an appearance, yeah, got a couple appearances with his crew and everything. Got Kivo, got bands, got some couple young artists. Got DOC doing a word on there. Yeah, they had a nice little approach with that album right there. Big X the Plug definitely is a shining star of a rookie. Had an appearance on Lil Wayne's Carter 6 album. Smoked his appearance. Regardless of what you people feel about Lil Wayne's album, Big X the Plug did his job on his appearance. He smoked that appearance. But yeah, I love seeing the younger generation coming out rapping and going hard and everything too. Big X the Plug, like I said, Atlanta still going strong, Memphis still going tough. Um, Still got Texas is going tough still. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's a lot going on in hip hop. The big three, trap lane, the melodic rap, whatever you want to call it. You know, one of the other people I got to check out too. Um, Kodak Black. I know kind of goes in and off the radar from time to time, or off the rails, shall I say. But yeah, Kodak Black dropped a lot of music in the 2020s. Um, Bill Israel, Haitian Boy, Kodak. That was an album that a lot of people liked. Cutthroat Bill, Back for Everything was another album people liked as well. Yeah, a lot of people, outside another person, outside of the annex and everything, when he got in the booth and made music, he was pretty good at it. Super Gremlin, you know, when Kodak is in a zone, he's actually made a good run of music. And I always think about that freshman class that had him and 21 Savage in there. Like I said, a couple of those Drake projects that he worked on turned out pretty good. He's an artist that kind of came out like I said, that freshman class. He just dropped the album last year as well at the end of last year, December. What Happened to the Streets? Atlanta Tears came out pretty good with him and Lil Baby. And I was impressed with that one. He had Drake on there, jump on there with him. Nudie. Yeah, it was a lot of good work. Oh, before I leave out of the state of Texas, got a shout out of rest in peace to Mo 3. Mo 3 had a good run as well. That was cut tragically short, but man, that 2020s, I mean, you went on a crazy run. Started off in 2010. You start picking up in the 2010s, and then you know life tragically cut short. But he has some really good songs with melodic rap. He can actually rap too. He did a melodic rap and he can actually flow. He's out there, I believe the Dallas area, Texas. Like I said, Texas coming out real strong. Um, and then we also had, Florida, like I said, went to Florida with Kodak Black. So I mean, that was one of the great things about the 2020s and the 2010s. Like I think the 2010s was started a run of regionless hip hop, kind of, where it was like there wasn't a region that was necessarily. I mean, South was still South, right? But in the streaming era, there was so many artists that got popular or just different regions. Like I said, the West Coast. When Kendrick got back on, Kendrick started putting out classic songs, classic albums, and everything like that. You start seeing a resurgence out of the West Coast as well, and it seems like I'm going all over the place. And that's what hip hop is right now, all over the place. You know what I mean? You got Schoolboy Q, another one. He did a lot of his work in the 2010s, but then he came out 2 years ago and dropped Blue Lips. A lot of people thought this one was the best album of 2024. And this one right here was really good. I remember going back and listening to this, the beat selection on that one, the concepts and everything. Yeah, Schoolboy Q from TDE definitely did his thing in that album. Like I said, that was a great album of the 2020s. Even though that was his only one of the 2020s, it was a great one. Um, Going around, it also goes another album that was the only of the 2020s, but it was the first time in a while, and it was a hit. Clips, Let God Sort Them Out. I was like their first album in 2009. Yeah, and it was, I mean, it's aging. I mean, I know it can only age better. I mean, it came out strong, real tough. Everybody, mass reviews, rave reviews for this album. This album was real tough. Chains and Whips, Kendrick's verse on there. FICO with Stove God Cook. Um, this album was crazy. Glorious Bastards, yeah. Yeah, this one out here, definitely rave reviews from this one last year. This album right here was debated as the one that should have won the Grammy um over GNX. That was the album. That was the album. This is the album right here. Yeah, Let God Sort Them Out was debated as should have won the Grammy over GNX. It was a tough one. And another album that was also debated as such, JID. JID had a great 2020s as well. God Does Like Ugly came out in 2025, and it was definitely a great album that was highly revered. Like I said, Grammy nominated. Came down to almost, I would say in that three cart race with the Clips album, Let God Sort Them Out, and GNX. This was the third album in that race for the album, the rap hip hop album of the year last year for this past Grammys. Forever Story that came out in 2022. This was another great album that came out right here. So, um, yeah, JID, younger artist, quietly coming up with a great discography. You don't know anything about him, he's from the Atlanta area, from the East Side. Um, Check him out. He's dope. I would put him in the same type of style as a J. Cole, a Kendrick, and everybody else as well. He's definitely carving out a nice lane for himself. And yeah, I mean, like I said, the trap lane looking good. The real hip hop lane looking good. That just leaves pretty much like the really, really independent, flying under the radar. Certain artists that most people. Oh yeah, before I do that though, another rest in peace, Pop Smoke. Um, he was only around for a little bit of time, but the work he did in 2020's highly impactful. Um, Meet the Woo, the Gluck, you know, had a couple great appearances on there as well. Great club song, Dior. He was an artist that, I mean, was gone as soon as he came into the 2020's, but he was highly impactful in a little bit of time he was there. He did projects with, he did work with Lil Baby, did work with other great artists at that time. He was highly impactful, like I said. Singles that still get played right now to this day. Like I said, life tragically cut short, but he was definitely made a big impact in the 2020's and that just in that little bit of time. I mean, that's all it takes, I guess, when you hit on songs the way he did. But yeah, and this time right now, going to the more independent wave of hip hop, and this is kind of where you see a group such as Griselda, and Griselda has individual parts as well. The record label has several different artists. Griselda typically comprised of three main artists: Benny the Butcher, Conway the Machine, and West Side Gun. These are artists that were signed that were once with Eminem and kind of just went off into their own thing, kind of like independently. And they started up an underground movement that everybody's kind of jumped on as far as underground hip hop because it kind of bring back that boom bap sound and that typical hard grungy East Coast toughness. That tough sound and hard grungy beats, hard great lyricism, um, gritty storytelling and everything like that. But West Side Gun, one of the main ones. One of the things he specializes in is beat selection and great features and everything like that. He kind of went on a run of different projects. They started in the 2010's as well. I mean, went longer than that, honestly, but they really started picking up after their run with Shady Records and West Side Gun. He kind of, as you see, he went through a whole run of different projects. Huge wrestling fan. A lot of his albums got wrestling covers on them. And you got Conway the Machine, another artist with extensive catalog, another member of Griselda, natives of East Buffalo, New York. Um, yeah, from the 2020's on, he's done a ton of different projects. Won't He Do It? I would suggest that. Um, just dropped the album last December, Can't Kill God with Bullets. That was a great project. Definitely suggest that one as well. Lulu. This one right here was produced by Alchemist. Another great production one. Only 7 tracks, but hard hitting. Um, did a joint project with Ransom. Yeah, Conway the Machine was definitely on the run. The whole Griselda. Yeah, they didn't. I mean, they took the 2010s and took it to another level throughout the 2020s. And then you also got, and that leaves Benny the Butcher. Now Benny was on a lot of them, and now they're doing work with a lot of Rock Nation work with them as well, Rock Nation management. So you start to see a little more of their work get out there a little bit more. They still kind of do their thing a little more independent. Got still got their own label and everything, but they work more with mainstream record labels now. Like I said, Rock Nation. Um, Benny was also working with Kanye for a while too, and then he kind of went his own way. Like I said, ended up with Rock Nation. And recent projects like Summertime Butch, Part 1 and 2, Everybody Can't Go. That one right there, like I said, Under the Rock. Tana Talk 4, everybody loves that one. You got to check that one out. Plugs I Met too. Definitely got to check that one out. I like pretty much all of Benny's individual projects as well as Conway. So yeah, they definitely got to check out the Griselda work. They got other artists that were signed to them as well. We got Boldy James from Detroit. The last couple of lives I've been on, he's dropping a project almost every month. Feels like almost every week. But yeah, he's done tons of work in the 2020s. Um, Particularly in 2021, he did it. Bo Jackson with Alchemist. Like I said, Alchemist is one of the busiest producers ever, and the 2020s is indicative of that. Um, he's done tons of projects since then. Definitely hard at work. You know, like I said, a lot of artists doing it under the radar without really any mainstream recognition or push. He's just spitting for the love of the game. And I love that for them. I like to shout them out. People that's actually spitting hard music and it's flying under the radar. I like to point them out. Artists that are Ransom from New Jersey. I mean, he just dropped a new project with Boldy James this year. Dropped like 4 projects last year. One of the best lyricists. He's been going at it for about 20 years himself. People might remember from the days rapping with Fabulous and Joe Budden, Paul Kane, a lot of them. Definitely took off, still doing his own thing. But yeah, there's a lot of different artists out here that's doing their thing. And like I said, the 2020s was it's been crazy. Like I said, that's just part 1 of it. We'll come back with another episode and we'll do a part 2 of some of the best work that came out in the 2020s. Probably get more in depth, revisit a lot of albums individually so I can give it more time. But I just wanted to show everybody the way. Come back and revisit this episode. If you ever want to look at new artists and hip hop and try somebody else out new that you ain't like or that you never knew before, say you found it on here. That's my time for the evening. You can find me on Instagram at This Is Left Fresh. You can find me on TikTok at This Is Left Fresh. X is This Is Left Fresh, all social media platforms. Thank you all for jumping on with me. Like I said, I'll be back on Wednesday to do more sports, follow up on March Madness and NBA coverage and NFL offseason and all that good stuff. I plan on 8:30. I'll be back next weekend as well. Like I said, probably 10 o'clock is probably going to be the most agreeable time frame, considering the March Madness and everything that's going on in the sports events. I think it's better at this slot. Like I said, if you haven't done it already, you can subscribe, like, comment, share, tell a friend to tell a friend. Like I said, you can jump in the comments of this and provide any other artists that you think I might need to get put on to. Like I said, I'm willing to look into it myself and come back and talk about it. But you all have a great weekend. Enjoy doing this with you all. And you have a great night. It's the Left Fresh Podcast.